Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Open Leaders for Hardware. We are currently in week 6 of our mentoring program, and today we're talking about building for open, which means how to open up your project to make it a real open project. So, in the last weeks, you had the opportunity to work a lot on the details of your project. Think a bit about your value proposition, also about personas, and create test cards and so on. This week we want to concentrate on the contributor and user channel of the open canvas you also used in the very beginning, because we want to create entry points for this group. And another goal is to write guidelines and templates to make actually using and contributing to your project a bit easier. This means we want to reduce any entry barriers or make them as low as possible, so everybody can just join and help you, but also can go see your repository and start using your project or product. Right. Another major point will be maintaining a welcoming and healthy environment. This is not only for the users, but also for the contributors. How to maintain this will be also something I will talk about in the following. One major point in the very beginning, just because you put your project online doesn't mean it is actually open, like in the means of it's accessible for everybody. Because if you just have something really undocumented in the project, in the complexity we see during our program, I think it's not really feasible that anybody can use them without any instructions and so on. And that's why we will give you some suggestions today on how to open your project for different contexts. Different contexts are, for example, the users and contributors. So what do users actually want, and this might be specific also to your project, and I would just want to remind you to think about your personas. But one question users might ask is, how is your product used and how can it replicate it? How can I get it, like physically, and so on. Contributors, on the other hand, might ask, how can I get involved and what can I contribute? Where can I begin? And do you need my skills? Can I learn something by contributing to your product? And how do I actually contribute? Well, so what's important? These are just some examples for us. So for the user, it's important to communicate changes in your product and also have change logs and display the roadmaps you have for your product so everybody can see when a feature is added, what you are working on currently, and so on. Because it gives them an imagination on what to expect. A really nice thing to have is educational resources, which means like tutorials or guides, something how to use your product. This might again be really specific for the project or product you're developing, but just think about your personas and maybe think about what kind of guide you could provide to them to make it easier to actually use your product or to make it more known and so on. On the contributor channel, on the other hand, for them it's also important to basically have an welcoming environment. And I was really thinking a lot if I should put this in the very beginning or in the end, because having a welcoming environment actually determines what kind of people you actually attract. And this is super important. So if you're if you want to actually attract contributors, you have to also make your project a bit nice and feel them welcome to contribute. And this you can do by actually providing also a framework. Tell them what they can do, direct them to issues where you need help, and also help them to see actually what they can do. So this is actually really hard and to find out how to do this in a very best way. But again, you also made a lot of assumption when you established your personas for your project, and I highly recommend you to use them, to use the knowledge you generated during establishing your personas, and think about what you could do to actually provide such an welcoming environment. So here are some examples on how to implement these things. So something users could really help is a well-maintained repository, and we also linked some well-maintained repositories with nice readmes, a well-maintained structure of the project, and so on, already during our program. What's also nice is to have a nice website and share updates there. Also introduce the product there, have directly introductory videos or something like this. You can also use or have a wiki where also people can add their own content and have it growing. But it's also sometimes nice and necessary also to use social media to inform your users, but also spread the word about your product. Tell them what it can do, share videos about it, with about new features or something like this. Well, for the contributor channel, it's a bit different. There are some things which are more or less mandatory, something like a code of conduct. So what's a code of conduct? It's basically a set of rules on how to behave when participating in your project as user, but also mainly and most importantly as contributor. We link in our document, for your assignment you have to write a code of conduct, and in our document we also link good examples of codes of conduct. And we also highly recommend you to read up a bit about it. There are several templates which you can use, but please take the effort and specify them for your project. Next, contribution guidelines. This is also a really important one. This one is not about like having rules on how to do something or you will be punished or whatever. It's more about to have actual guidelines to help other people, the contributors, to easily focus on doing things, contributing things, and not on, well, how do I have to file this pull request? How do I do this? How do I do that? And so on and so on. And this goes in hand with the contribution templates, which means like how to submit an issue, how to file a bug report, or how to add a feature request, and so on. A really nice thing to have is also a chat system where you can quickly exchange information with your contributors, and this makes you more like reachable in many ways, and also gives a nice feeling of a community if you share some conversation with the people contributing to your project. For all these things, we have examples in this week's program page on openhardware4.me, and you can have a look there and read a bit up about also contributing guidelines, because they are also very important and they should be also specific for your project. There are already some nice templates for contribution guidelines out there. It should be something you also would feel comfortable using when you would step up to your project as a newbie and so on, and that you actually know what to do. As I said, we link quite a lot of different examples, and we also want to suggest you some tools. So for many things, GitHub or GitLab issues are super easy to use. You can have different templates, and for example to file bug reports, and also to post your roadmap and so on, to let users know that you are working on a feature request and so on. Well, and the closely related to this are the Markdown files. The README is, for example, also a Markdown file, and you can add more on different levels of your project to guide possible users and also contributors through this Markdown files, through your project. The contribution guidelines and also the code of conduct can also be Markdown files. You can also have them as GitHub issues and so on. And yeah, last but not least, you can also have a wiki. You can take a look at the GitHub or GitLab wiki and see what you can do there. It has a lot of cool features, and you can try it yourself. We also want to suggest you some advanced tool. As I already said, a really nice thing to have is a documentation website. And there's a super easy way to get documentation without much work to do. You could use static site generators, for example, also with GitHub Pages, and that's what we do, for example, for Open Hardware, Open Leaders 4.me. And what it does is basically generates HTML website from Markdown files, which are super easy to manipulate, not manipulate, but to change. You can add content and so on via push and pull with the Git system and so on. You can start also and use newsletter tools, and write a blog about your project to get people informed, to spread the word about your project. And same with social media. It's nice to inform the people about maybe also feature requests and so on, but also, as I said, to spread the word, to make your product known. Well, as you can see, we are not getting really specific with most of the tools, but what you can do is you can check out and add more things to our open tools and resources list. There are already some really nice things, for example, about open chat systems like Rocket Chat or MetaMost, which you can also self-host and so on. Please go there. It's also linked here in the slides. Please go take a look at it. And yeah, if you have some things to add, please feel free and add them, because it should be a growing list. It's open for everybody. You're also free to copy it and share it with everybody else. Last but not least, we want to show you some examples. And let's take a look at the Precious Plastics Academy. Precious Plastics is a really nice project. It's a whole environment actually, and it's incredible what they did, like what they developed in the past years. And it's basically all about recycling plastics. And here in the Precious Plastics Academy, this is basically a whole environment of educational resources with lots of videos and also a lot of text, and they are mostly also generated from Markdown files. And what we basically want you to show is how nicely everything goes together, and how they build up basically the whole documentary about their environment. They also introduce the basics of plastics right here. They also introduce some scientific background to what they are actually doing, and also what the reason is why they are actually doing it. And yeah, then they introduce how you can also contribute and start helping them doing this. Finally, they also introduce their Precious Plastic Universe. Please take a look at it, because it's a really nice project, and they're basically trying to set up different universes. You have the spaces and so on. Please take a look, and maybe also consider contributing. Another example is Snappy, which uses it's a true reprap printer, so it's basically um, mostly 3D printed parts to build a 3D printer. And yeah, this is the old version, and here you can also have a look at the latest version. But this one is a basic wiki documentation, and this just as an example. Maybe this is something which will work for your project. Last but not least, we also want to share with you the vention.io page. And you can see when you start like loading the page, you directly see like, the product in use. So this definitely directly addresses the users, which is an important thing like to think about. Like which person do you want to like attract, and like who should get, who do you want to talk to? And this is also very important to think about, but you also already thought about this during the development of your personas and pathways, right? It's mainly describing things, how it actually works. So they describe they describe the use of their product and so on, and it's less about actually contributing. Last but not least, we also have the Prusa website. I actually don't know the earlier website, but I was told that it was quite different in earlier times. Now, so what do you think is the focus now on this Prusa website? Well, apparently it's not like the guide on building it. It's not how to contribute. Well, it's all about like how to buy it and advertising basically their product. Don't get me wrong, I really love my Prusa. I don't want to have any other 3D printer anymore, but still, they completely changed the focus, and it's now about buying it. You can also have the community side and so on, but actually it's not that easy to then, for example, get to the assembly instructions. And it would be really nice to also, if you want to build something like this, you also want to have more people actually building the Prusas on their own. You could maybe put this on the very first level. But this is just my opinion about this, and just an example on how different the focus can be also maybe for your project. I know I repeat myself, but really think about your personas when you design basically the entry points into your project. So, last but not least, for this week, you have some assignments to do. First of all, please write, first of all, please write some contribution guidelines and also community guidelines. So contribution guidelines is all what rules are there, how to submit, for example, a pull request and so on. Community guidelines are basically a code of conduct. Please also take a look at different code of conduct. You can also read up all the resources which are provided by Mozilla Open Leaders. They have extensive resources about these community guidelines. We link them also on our page, and create some templates for contributors. What we want you to do specifically is to create dedicated issues and label them with maybe, for example, first-timer issue and so on. Because what we advise you to do to be also a really welcoming project, to include newbie contributors. So people who possibly never contributed to an open hardware project before. because this is also part of the community to increase maybe also the like to make out of users make contributors. And for myself, sometimes if I feel I really like a project and I feel like how can I contribute, is actually what I can do. Is it actually necessary? And maybe there are what small things can I do? So that's why we want you to create these dedicated first timer issues, which can be, as I said, super small things like proofreading text or maybe also translating things and so on. And yeah, an improved labeling also of your issues will help you to find people who can specifically help you with some single things which you can't or you don't have the time to do, and so on. So with this, I'm at the end of this week's program, this week's presentation. Please take a look at our curriculum and our program. Have a nice week and see you soon. Goodbye.